Hi everyone. In this video series I'll be demonstrating how to set up and use the Becker Support Unreal Engine plugin. The purpose of the plugin is to provide a framework for Unreal Engine developers to easily enable custom Becker benefits in your game or application. The framework consists of two parts: the plugin itself, which is available on the Unreal Engine marketplace, and the backend API server, which is freely available as an open source project on both GitHub as a source and Docker Hub as installable Docker image. So first, let's start with setting up the server side. Becker Support plugin needs to have an online backend API set up to accommodate OAuth 2 protocol for exchanging information with various crowdfunding platforms. Conveniently, plugin is accompanied by an easy-to-use minimalistic open source backend implementation hosted on GitHub. To install it on your web server and configure it for your crowdfunding campaign, you just need to follow a fairly simple set of instructions provided in the install MD document. You might want to have your local open source guru for this one, so kindly cover their electricity and coffee expenses, and let's start. So the thing we are trying to do is have something like this set up. So I have this backend running on my demo domain, and what we need to have here is set up our game tiers, game versions, and connect our backend with Patreon authorization. So to set that up, I'll use the same domain, but I'll shut down this server so that we can start from scratch and then set everything up following the install MD document. So first, about some prerequisites we need. You probably want some Docker web hosting service. There are many online providers available. You just need to search for Docker hosting platforms. I'll do it like this, and you'll get a bunch of ads, of course, because there are many available, and you'll probably find some comparisons and find the one that best suits you and your needs. I have one. I'm using one virtual private server, which I am currently logged into here, and I'll install it on this one. And this one is already connected to my this one already has my proxy set up, listening on specific forwarding actually specific ports. So I'll show that in a minute. The one thing you do need is to have installed Docker Compose. I have it here, so it's working. If it's not working on your server, you probably need to use Aptitude or whichever package management you have and install that. So Docker Compose is depending on Docker, so it will install both of them. Or if you are using some kind of other hosting service and not a virtual private server, you might already have that set up. And of course, you need to have your proxy set up. So I'll now shut down the server you just saw. So this one, I'll shut this down and we can start. So it's this one, and we can start from scratch. So let me just do that in a second. I'll do it like this. Once this command is done, when I refresh, it should show that the server is not running and that it's not found on this machine. So yeah, I'm using Nginx as proxy, and it is reporting that that it is set up wrong, that it's not finding my server on the port I set it up. So let's now do that from scratch. In this console, I'll go to my folder where I want to install this. And the first thing we need to do is we need to download our Docker Compose YAML file. This is configuration for our Docker containers. And I also want to download this environment variables template. So it's this one. This is all also available on the GitHub repository. So if you go inside of the folder structure, you'll find these files and you can download them there, but I'll use wget. So if I run this command, so this is the first file, and if I run this command, so this one is downloading environment template file, but outputting it as .env so that it's already set up. So now I have my Docker Compose YAML file and my .env environment template. So the next thing I need to do is set up the variables in the .env file. I need to set these 6 at minimum, but also, as we'll just see in a moment, there are other variables you can set up. So you can set them up in this .env file, but you can also pass this as environment variables via any other mean. Probably if you are using some hosting services, probably you'll just have some kind of interface to set up your environment variables. So for this one, for example, we can set this to anything, because so not a password, because this is just for demo purpose, but you want to set this to be as safe as possible. I'll leave the Django super username at admin, which is default. You also need to set up a super user email. I'll just type, it doesn't need to be valid. It's not by any mean validated, except that it looks like an email. It is, I think, used maybe for some notifications, but probably not. And for this one, I'll just make up some password like 1234 UE5. Django debug, I'll set this to false. Of course, if you need debugging, you can enable this. I won't change this Django insecure. This is secret key. You probably want to set this to some random string. And allowed hosts. Now I need to set this correctly, and in my case, I already have these on my other screen, so I'll just copy paste because I don't want to type in something incorrect. And so for the allowed hosts list, this is comma separated. It does not need to have a protocol, but for cross-site referencing it, for trusted origins, it needs also to have whether it's HTTP or HTTPS. So that's some things I need to set up. And the final one is I need to set my API port to the one that I used when setting up my proxy. So my Nginx is set up to listen to 13.035. So that's the one I'll use. For host database port, you could leave this empty and not have, or even comment this out in your Docker Compose YAML file. because you don't need to expose this outside of that Docker Compose network. However, if you want to access this database from outside, or for example, for some other API, you might want to set this up to something useful. Okay, so I'll save and exit this file. And the next thing we need to do is actually run Docker Compose pull. So I'll actually just copy this one. I don't want everything. So Docker Compose pull will pull those images. So you need one image. In my case, it is done instantly because my Docker already has those images. But you will need Postgres image because that's the way I set up Django. It could be set up differently, but this one, I think it covers most use cases. So this is one Postgres database and container, and the server is actually this one, which is hosted on Docker Hub. So it's this one that I provided for the plugin. So now we actually have everything set up and we can run this Docker Compose up. I'm running it with -d, which means that it will run in daemon mode. If you want to see the output, you might want to run it like this, but it will lock your terminal also. I want to run it in the background, so I'll just do this. And that's it. So now it's running and I should be able to refresh. So it's still not, it takes some couple of seconds for proxy to realize that it's there. If I set up everything correctly. So I have, and now I can use my admin login, and the password was 1234 UE5. It needs to have some numbers and letters in it, but I think it wouldn't mind if it's something different. So if anything doesn't work, you might want to run Docker Compose without -d, because then you'll have some debug output and you can check what the error was when setting up Django, or if there was some error setting up the Postgres database. One of the problems might be that the port you are trying to bind to is already in use, or that your admin username, password or email is not accepted, and in that case it would just not initialize correctly and you wouldn't be able to connect to this one. So now we have our API backend up and running, and you'll immediately see that some kind of notifications what you need to set up next, and we'll go through those in just a second, but let's just see that everything is here. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we get an error that it failed getting Patreon API, so that's what we'll set up next. One thing to take a note of is that these API endpoints need to be exposed through your proxy, through your server proxy. So you need to have your admin, of course, because we are just using that one. That address is used here for administration interface. And you need to have your config, Patreon, register, unregistered, and code. So those are endpoints that are used by the plugin when communicating to communicating with the backend. So let's now go here. So this is here actually in API config. You can see that we don't have any of these variables set up. So that's why we get this error message, and to fix it, we need to go to this address. So I will go at this address, but not in with this login, because this one is logged in to my test Patreon account, which we'll use in the next video to set to demo how the plugin works. So I'll just copy this link address and I'll open that in another window. So I'll open it here. So if I go to this Patreon portal, registration, register clients, it will open up my campaign, which I already have set up, and I have already some clients and API keys set up. So we'll use these demo ones. I will show you later, you can, for test purpose or something like that, you can actually run the backend locally in local network, but it will only work for local users. So if you want to have it in your company or something like that, and just license some maybe testers or something like that, then you can use localhost and set it up that way. However, we'll use for this demo, we'll use this one. This is actually the same thing, so I'll just close this one. So now let's see what we need to set up. I might do this, and I'll actually close this one so that we have this clear. So what you will want to do is you'll want to go to this create client. Actually, I'll just note that here in this step-by-step instructions, you have that also written here. So you need to configure your Patreon keys. You need to go to this URL, click create client, which is this button here, and copy corresponding keys to configuration API config in the backers API admin panel. So that's actually here, right? Because we are now in API config configuration, and you need to copy these. So when you go to create client, it needs app name, description, app category. You want to select Patreon benefits. You might want something different, but this is what works. Author, company name, domain, icon if you want one, and have one. You do need to have a valid privacy policy and terms of service. I'll show you those in a second. And you must have a redirect URL. And also API version, you want to set this to version 2. Even though version 2 is currently in kind of beta mode, it is used by the plugin, and I think that that provides the most long-term support. So here you have some help instructions, like for example, redirect URI to use is this one. So you would want this one. You can just copy it and use API version 2, and that's this one. So so that I don't have to copy all these, I'll just close this and open this one, because I already have that set up here. So I'm calling this one Backers Demo, and some description, company, aileron split, and I have these privacy policy, I can even copy this. So privacy policy here and terms and conditions. I'll copy it here. I'll show a bit later. Actually, I'll show this in the next video when these URLs are used, but you probably want to set them up. And this is what I just talked about a minute ago. So what you get there is you get your client ID. You should keep this secret and this client secret. I'll delete this one. This is just for recording this video. But you do not want to leak this information. So client ID goes into client ID here. Client secret goes into client secret. Your access token, you can actually refresh this access token. If something goes wrong and it stops working, you probably want to refresh this one, even though the backend actually keeps track of your access and refresh token and refresh them automatically when needed. So you can copy it here to access token and refresh token here. So you don't need to fill in this creator ID. And you might want to pay attention if you have some extra characters here, just as I had with this one. And then when you filled everything up, so when you copied all the information, you click save. And if everything works fine, so it will report that it saved API config variables, and you should get the information about the Patreon campaign. You should get a campaign ID and the name of the creator. So also this Patreon creator ID gets filled in automatically. So yeah, my screen is a bit bigger, so you might not see all this, but here you get also the creator ID. So this is what it should look like when it's working. If it's not working, you get that error message again, and then you just need to check all the information. So now we don't need this anymore. This is all set up, and you have your backend connected with your Patreon account. So now you go to Patreon tiers. You need to configure your Patreon tiers. If you take a look at, so I'll close this also. I don't need this one also because this is all set up. So if you take a look at your install document, install instructions, the next thing you need to do is configure your tiers. So Patreon tiers will auto sync with Patreon campaign. We'll see that in a second. Then we need to select all tiers, choose mirror to game tiers, and click go, and then add game tiers, codes, and labels. So let's actually show that. So when I click at Patreon tiers, you can see that it auto imported Patreon tiers which I have. So let's take a closer look at these because there's a lot going on there. So if I scroll down, I'll see a lot of tiers, even though in my campaign, which I could maybe even show. So yeah, if I go here and go to my page, you can see, yeah, I'll probably, yeah, okay. I probably want to see this as public. You can see that I have only 2 tiers publicly available here. So let's see what's going on there. So The backend got all tier information, but only, as you can see, only these two are published. Other tiers are active, but not published, so they are not publicly visible. But on some of those, there are actually Patreons. So they are still valid for registering. So if you have some Patreons on tiers which are not publicly available, but they are like all Patreons or patrons or something like that, and you want to provide the benefits to them as well, then you should configure all of your previous tiers. So I have this like a small Patreon campaign running for a while now, and I try different things. So this is kind of a good example and good test bed for various use cases which you might encounter. So one other thing that might happen is that if you actually delete your tier, but you still have it in this system, so that one is also covered. I might talk about that. Actually, let's just add. You might want to add also manually. So reward ID, it would be, I don't know, something like this, and the label would be, I don't know, some kind of legacy. And I'll just save that one. So now you can see that this legacy, it got tier status legacy because it was not recognized as one of active tiers. So, and this is, you get also some information here. So now what you want to do is maybe you want to select all of them. Probably if you have, if you just created a campaign and all of your tiers are actually published, and you just want to select all of them and migrate them into game tiers. So I'll explain later why we have separate Patreon tiers, separate from game tiers. But one of the reasons is that right now only Patreon is supported, but very soon there might also be other crowdfunding campaigns supported. So crowdfunding platforms actually supported. So you might want to have different tiers on different platforms, but in game you want to acknowledge your backers in the same way. So yeah, for now so in my case I actually don't want to migrate all of them. I actually just want to migrate published. So I want to have these two, and I want to mirror them to game tiers, so they will be copied and initialized in game tiers. I want to save that. No, I don't want to save that. Thank you. I want to click go because I want to execute that action. And as you can see, I got game tiers. So there are two new tiers created here, which we'll take a look in a second. But immediately I see that I don't want this A through F. I want to rename this code to something like maybe true fan. And this one, so this one is Coffee Droid. So this tier code is 8-character long ID, which gets sent to the game. So this is how the game recognizes it. So this one I want to maybe just call Droid. Okay. So now they have more descriptive names, and it's easier. So yeah, I'll clear filters now and see what I have. So I have 2 game tiers, but only 2 of the of the Patreon tiers are associated with those. So I want to actually, so this one I'll set to be Coffee Droid, and all of these I want to associate with some tier. If I don't do that, Patreons which try to connect their Patreon login with the game will just get rejected, so they won't be able to log in with these. Okay, so now we have actually everything set up. Don't forget to click save, and Patreon tiers will change successfully. So now let's take a look what's next. So yeah, we have now we have all game tiers. We probably want to go to game tier codes and labels. We can edit them if we want to change them and name them differently. So here in game tiers we have Coffee Droid and True Fan. So tier label is this, and tier code is this. I want to add another one, which I'll explain probably in the next video why. And I want to call this one tester, and this will be tester custom tier, and I hope I can spell. Okay, so I'll save that one. So I have also one which is not connected to Patreon, and I'll see why. I'll show you in the next video why this is useful and how it can benefit you. So yeah, okay. So the last thing we need to do on our server before we go into configuring Unreal Engine plugin is we need to create a version. So you can do that here, game versions. And what this thing does is you can create a version name, which can be any string, but probably you want something like, I don't know, version 1.0, or you can include which branch is that, like main branch or maybe dev branch or something like that. So I can create version string any way I want, and you just need to save this one. I can click any of these, but save and continue editing will leave me in this edit page. So I'll just click that. And the reason is because I want to see which information is generated automatically for me. So this version hash is something that identifies the version when the game is connecting the API, and that way it knows which version the game is referring to. And so this version is actually, you can have only one if you want, but this should reflect your game version which you just released, deployed, and for which you want to enable licensing. So if you have, for example, if you have your key for or like game code for one version, it will not work with the other version. So for the other version, you would again have to connect to your Patreon account and get the key. So that's ID. It is actually just MD5 hash of this string. So you can generate that yourself, but conveniently it's here. And the other thing is it generated RSA key pair, so asymmetric key pair for signing the codes. So here you have your public part, which you will copy in your game executable, actually in plugin configuration. And you will also need this version hash, and conveniently it also here displays just the base URL of your backend API, of your Becker's API. So that's all the information you need to set up correctly your plugin, and this is everything you need to have your backend server working. So that's it. I hope it was easy to follow and easy to set up. Everything is, so we did the first part of this document, so everything is documented here, and in the next video we'll configure the plugin itself and use it. Okay, so thank you. Yeah, with this yeah, I think that's everything I had in my notes. So in the next video we'll set the plugin up, and I'll see you there.